What is the biggest it's one banana? What can it cost? $10. Moment you've witnessed in real life. I work at a veterinary hospital in a fairly wealthy area. Once had a client hand me a $50 for a $9 nail trim on her dog. I told her the price and she just shrugged, told me to keep the change, and said that would be my lunch money for the week. I once got asked to watch my buddy's mom's dog. Cute Pomeranian, super well behaved. I was stoked to watch the little dude. She messaged me and told me where the garage key was and that she left a couple $100 on the table for me. A couple hundred. I showed up at noon and took the money and the dog and went into town. Took him to the dog park, then the beach, and then we kicked it and napped for a couple hours. Dropped him off around 6 p.m. It was the easiest $200 I've ever made. I kind of have one. I work in estate management as a side gig and most of my clients are wealthy. It's usually the kids who are out of touch. I once spent 10 minutes trying to explain the concept of used cars to the college-aged daughter of one of my clients. She just could not grasp that some people buy cars that are not brand new. She seemed to think that after a car gets used for a while, it gets returned to the dealer and shipped off to a poor country. It was really bizarre. She was pre-med too. I grew up in a very well-to-do suburb and there was a family that would buy cedar clothes hangers for their closets, but then once the cedar smell wore off after a month or so, they'd buy new ones and take the old ones to Goodwill. Apparently just lightly sanding them to refresh the scent was too much trouble. Had a roommate in college who was pretty well off. I was pretty much putting myself through school and was almost always broke. One day we went by the ATM that dispensed in $5 increments. Yeah, I made damn sure I knew where those were. Anyway, turns out I had less than $5 in the bank, so looked at my buddy and said, "Well, looks like no beer for me tonight." He literally looked at me and said, "Well, just take it out of your other account." I just stared at him and asked what he meant. Turns out he legit thought that everybody had a second account their parents kept filled with emergency money. He did buy beer that night though, so he was a good guy, just kinda clueless. I have an aunt and uncle who are both experienced aerospace engineers, retired military officers, now higher ups at private contractors, so they make an obscene amount of money. You can always tell how much they've lost touch with the value of a dollar when you look at presents they've bought. One time years ago at Christmas, they bought my aunt a $600 iPod and my mom a $20 trillion shirt. They didn't mean any insult, they just thought my mom would like a shirt better and that my aunt would like an iPod better, and they didn't even look at the prices of them. Kinda the opposite, but I once went out with the ultra wealthy parents of this girl I was dating, and they made a big deal of me ordering whatever I wanted and getting appetizers and dessert and drinks and everything. And once I put in like a $75 single person order, her dad just ordered 2 hot dogs and laughed at how expensive my meal was. It was the most expensive lunch I had ever had at that point, and I really respect that man's trallery. He had a much better sense of humor than his daughter. I was flying a private jet and the caterers forgot the owner's sandwich. He graciously said no big deal and I replied that he'd call when we landed because they charged us $100 for it. He said, "Is that a lot? How much does a sandwich normally cost?" The president of my company asked me if I thought I could live on $100 per day. I told him I did every single day. I was probably making $13 to $14 at the time. So out of touch with reality when that's what one makes in an hour. A customer called me about a mistake on their bill. They thought I forgot to add another zero. I'm a landscaper, mostly softscape and property maintenance. Had a friend tell me that he was done dealing with mutual friend because they had given up on themselves. What all they had actually done was worked for a year before starting grad school because their father isn't a millionaire who has paid all their bills into their 30s while they played around and had fun with hobby jobs without having to worry about financial security. It wasn't really a banana, it was more that they didn't understand how much life actually costs when you pay your own bills and thought less of people for working to pay their bills. I got a new job slightly above minimum wage and my girlfriend's dad got excited for me and told me I could afford a new Tesla now. I sold hash to a business partner of my dad's when I was in college. I had a variety, and it was the only drug he enjoyed. He obliquely asked me to bring it over to him. No discussion of what or how much. I biked over to his very nice place and he had a coffee and a chat, and I simply handed it to him and was getting ready to leave, thinking maybe he'd have my dad pay me. Nope. As I left there was an envelope on next to the rear entrance. It contained $500 for like $80 of hash. He would repeat this several times. He just needed a source he could trust and not raise eyebrows. When my dad passed he helped manage the estate, and we had an implicit mutual trust that made things go much easier. Used to house sit for a rich dude with 3 homes in different states. Periodically he'd ask me to run an errand for him and would PayPal me money to cover the cost. He consistently overpaid for whatever the value was, because I can only think in hundreds. Seemed like a nice problem to have. I asked a girl at a party if she had some cash to buy more alcohol and she gave me $500. That's when I realized she was drunk as S***T. There was an obscenely rich kid that I went to high school with. At lunch one day, he thought his friend's peanut butter and jelly sandwich looked good, so he offered him $20 for it. For the rest of the school year, the friend brought 2 sandwiches to lunch every day and gave the rich kid one for $20. I worked for one family as the general family personal assistant for a long time. These people are wealthy. Like drop $1 million in cash on an oceanfront condo wealthy. The husband gave me $150 cash to go to the grocery store to buy a 12-pack of water and $6.1 yogurts. I don't think he's even stepped foot in a grocery store before. Hope this goes here. I repair bathtubs and showers. I've been in poor homes, middle class homes, wealthy homes and super mansions. So we were at this mansion, the kind where there's a tennis court and pool in the backyard. The kind where the foyer and first room of the house had 16x16 black granite tile with subfloor heating. Just this magnificent house with its 3-car garage, but in the garage there were 3 lifts to literally stack their vehicles. These F***KERS were loaded. They are updating the house to sell, so they can move back to North Jersey. They replaced the soaking unit in the master. The granite in that bathroom was absolutely breathtaking. It was blue, and under a certain light, sparkled like there were lights built into it. The deck was cracked at the cork line, so we're in there fixing it. Being as anal and meticulous as possible BC we know, we're in probably the most expensive house ever. The wife comes in to chat with us, and basically states that they just got the same kind of soaker as before BC. It's the only thing that fit in the spot. Eventually she says something like it's okay though, it was only $8,000. If I was drinking something I'd have choked on it. She said it like the tub was a piece of S***T that she settled for BC. It was cheap. $8,000 was a drop in the bucket. TL. Doctor, rich woman referred to an $8,000 soaking tub as cheap in so many words. In college, as I was making dinner one night, my wealthy roommate expressed surprise that you could get vegetables in a can, like totally in shock at the idea of canned vegetables. It turns out that in his house the cook simply went down to the market every afternoon to pick up fresh veggies, and he'd never known it could be done any other way. Edit. Just to clarify, yes, canned vegetables are a real thing in America, and were pretty popular as a cheap alternative. Even today, the canned vegetable section of the supermarket takes up most of a full row. Yes, fresh veggies are the way to go, being cheaper and more delicious. This was not a post about the virtues of canned vegetables, but about the idea of someone so isolated by money that they had never been in a grocery store. I worked at a very expensive and exclusive country club, the type you'd see the bluffs at. One of the members drove her golf cart over from her house and said the help had forgotten to buy a loaf of bread and wanted to buy one from our kitchen. I told her that we couldn't sell her a loaf of bread, so she asked how many sandwiches a loaf of bread can make. I ended up selling her 10 sandwiches with nothing on it at $7 a piece. I was friends with a girl whose family was rich, and she said stuff like that constantly. Personally, I like when she said I'm going to my dorm this weekend. I think what I've been looking for is there. She has her own apartment. Her parents pay for a dorm for her for extra storage. She has a roommate and everything. Her roommate lives with all her junk. Edit. She wasn't a freshman. It wasn't a regulation thing. She just had that much crap. I'm wicked late to this, but back when I was a cashier at Chipotle I had a woman misunderstand the price of a burrito. She heard me say that'll be $7.28, and without any hesitation, counted out 8 $100 bills from a wad of cash that must have been several $1,000s. We had a good laugh when she realized her mistake. She was carrying a suitcase and had a thick accent, so I think it may have been her first cash transaction in the US, and she was just so rich that it didn't occur to her that $800 was a **TLO80 of money to spend on a burrito. When we were told the international tuition fees for a PhD were $30,000 and my mom said, well that's not that much money. She also occasionally complains about healthy living in poverty, while also taking yearly trips to Europe. On the other hand, they can be quite generous with their time and support, so they can get away with the occasional tone-deaf comment. My wife's mom paid me $100 to cut her grass and her yard is small. One time I got texted by my dad's friend asking me to go pick up his car at the airport and take it to his house for him. Took like 5 minutes. Told me to keep the money under the floor mat. It was $250. My pop's grandfather handled all the finances for him and my nana, grandmother, so she never did the shopping or paid any bills. Her net worth now as a widow isn't shy of 1 meter. When Pops died, she bought herself a brand new car that was tailored to her disabilities because again Pops always did the driving. Her car was around $16,000. This was her first experience of buying a vehicle and thus thought this was the standard price for any car. I bought myself a new car a few months later. It was the same model as hers, but a few years older and had previous owners. All my other cars had come in under $600 and this new car was $5,000 and I took it out on finance, which was a huge deal for me. When she asked how much my car was, she was terrified that it bought a rundown Pose car and that there must be something horrendously wrong with it. We had to explain the value of cars to her and why mine was $10,000 less than hers. Flash forward to this year, my broke ass brother's death-trap car pretty much exploded, so she took him to buy a new one. He'd seen a pretty good car for just under $1,000 and figured that's what he could afford to pay back. Before he mentions it, she drags him to the dealership and buys an approved used car, same model and year as mine, at $3,000 and can't believe her luck at how cheap it was and gifts it to him because it was so cheap. Brother is speechless and very grateful. This is the same woman who had an absolute meltdown because her ambrosia custard pots had risen in price by 20p and she was now, very seriously, concerned that her continued purchase of them would bankrupt her. My brother moaning about his well-paying trade job and saying he was considering quilting it for a minimum wage supermarket job. What's minimum wage now? Like 10 an hour? No, it's $7.25. At that time, a few years ago. What? That's impossible. Who can live on that? Me. I do paid errands for my elderly cousin because she's decided I'm the bee's knees and a worthy charity. She's cool, just super out of touch and I don't think she ever had a concept of money to begin with. She thought a Starbucks latte I got her was $20 and assumed that, like it was a reasonable price. A friend of mine was dating a super wealthy girl in college. Not sure how they got together. It was some internship thing or something. He grew up pretty poor, and he told me a story about how they were at Walmart, and he was considering buying a pair of flip-flops, but they were like $10 and he wasn't so sure it was something he could afford at the time. Apparently she said to him, "What'll do you mean? You don't know if you should get them? Whenever I want new clothes I just ask my daddy for the money card." She literally used the phrase "the money card" as if it was some weird artifact that magically made all clothes free for her, which I guess it kinda did. He also told me she felt the need to take a full shower every time she pooped, which, I mean, that's a different thing, but still funny. It's not cost-wise, but in college my best friend and her dad had to take Metro North out of New York City to Westchester. We were in Grand Central and he asked her to get the tickets, whatever first class tickets they had. There are no first class tickets for Metro North. They're all the same. I worked at the concession stand at a movie theater, and it was opening weekend for a large Marvel movie and the line was super long to get popcorn. This rich millionaire dude from India walked up to me and handed me his Amex Black card and waved a hand over the entire line of customers and said whatever they want my friend and plopped it down hard on the glass counter. Him just like, are you sure? Him, whatever they want. With a huge smile on his face he waited as the entire line ordered ***T tons of food, entire combos, large everything, extra candy. I was like you total is up $10,718.62 and I swiped the card and it said transaction complete and he said thank you my friend and he went to watch his movie having fed everybody in line. Absolutely unreal moment. And no I didn't get a tip or anything but now I have a cool story to tell on Reddit. Complete strangers with just an unlimited budget to spend on movie snacks and drinks thanks to this man they didn't even know. My parents thinking they'd just pay for university without knowing the price. Somebody told me about a guy bragging about spending $100 on a bottle of wine and she told me everyone knows good wine is $100 a glass, not a bottle. This is sort of an opposite comment. I work at a big software company with some fairly well-heeled individuals. One night I was out drinking with a group of people and was ready to leave. There's a girl there whose father is on the board. She's super cool, but also has unimaginable wealth. She was leaving at the same time, so I offered to walk her home, since she lived in the city, and I had to catch an Uber out of the city. We walked for a bit, and she asked me why I was so into waking if I was going to get an Uber anyways. I told her I was walking out of the surge pricing zone. The look on her face. It was like I had introduced her to a concept that she could not fathom. My sister and I, both Latin American, befriended a Chinese girl in college. We always helped her in studying and with her English. Turns out her dad was some billionaire in China who owned a chemical producing company. She drove an expensive Audi, and for the longest, up until 2 years ago I was freeloading off the Chegg account she opened up for me. That account was paid for about 3 years. Whenever she'd invite us to go eat, the bills were super expensive, like $300 plus for just 3 people, but she played it off like they were nothing. I had never once eaten a single meal over $40 per plate until we ate with her. She'd always take us Starbucks food and on a couple occasions bought us books for school. At one point we went shopping with her. She wanted a laptop. She was gonna buy me one too, but I felt too guilty to accept it. Laptop was $3,000. Some Apple laptop. I felt like it was too much. She was really cool and treated my sister like her sister. She was living alone and didn't know many people. We were always friendly with classmates and that's how she got to know us. My sister and I are from low-income families. The money that was spent around her was ridiculous. Like $300 to $400 plus per lunch almost every day. That was around my weekly pay back then. Really miss her though. She was funny to be around with and always wanted to learn more about the US. Always insisted we go out with her to movies, shopping or dining, and teach her about our culture. Have not heard from her in 3 years. I grew up surrounded by wealthy kids who had no idea how money worked. When we were preteens and the holidays came around everyone was talking about their presents. So I said I was super excited because I was getting a new video game that I really wanted as a present. It was the expanded version of Zoo Tycoon. One of my classmates said to me, so when are you getting your golf cart? I just stared at him and said, aren't those super expensive? He laughed and replied, it's not that bad, I already wrecked my old one, so this is a replacement and is basically free. I just started at him thinking to myself, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. We had a client who worried if $50,000 a month would be enough to live on for the rest of her life. If ***king hope so. I have an incredibly rich friend and we were talking about owning a home someday. I was complaining about the prospect of having to pay off a mortgage for 20 plus years, and she said, oh why don't you just not get a mortgage and pay for it in cash? She had no idea that people don't have access to hundreds of thousands of dollars like that. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. Thanks for watching.